Alrighty, so today I want to talk about how you can protect yourself from narcissistic abuse and being exposed to these narcissists and, having them ruin your life. So, when you grow up in a narcissistic environment, when you're a kid and you're exposed to narcissistic abuse, what ends up happening is you don't develop a normal baseline of healthy emotional intelligence and behavior, because it's always hot and cold, or really nice or really bad. You're constantly you're never grounded in an emotional safe space. So what ends up happening is you then develop your emotional compass and foundation on something that is broken and that isn't right. And so when you then grow up to become an adult and you start relating to people in your life, men and women, your form of relating is falling back into that strange emotional abuse pattern that you experienced as a child. And so this is called trauma bonding. And what will end up happening is you become, a magnet for narcissists, because number one, they can easily manipulate you because you don't have any kind of emotional foundation or reality. You're used to the abuse. And number two, you become comfortable in it, because that's how you related to your mom, that's how you related to your dad and your siblings, was in that strange environment. So what ends up happening is this cycle gets created throughout your life, and you begin this trauma bonding cycle of all these relationships. And unless you break that cycle of trauma bonding, you're always going to feel comfortable in what you know, in that emotional foundation that you developed as a kid. And it isn't until you begin to learn and understand that this isn't right behavior, something is wrong here, and then start taking the steps to fix that and correct it, then you'll always be in this endless cycle, and it'll never end, and your whole life will be you'll be bonded to these narcissistic people. I mean, typically what I've observed is, a guy and a gal, whatever, they'll get married, have a family. The guy's a narcissist or the girl's a narcissist, and either they stay together and one of them toughs it out and the narcissist triumphs, or the family dissolves, and the narcissist destroys the family, and then the other person, who is the victim of the narcissistic abuse, chalks it up to hey, the relationship just didn't work, we didn't get along, and then the cycle just repeats. And so I did this for many years until I was about 44 now, until I was, when I met my wife, when I was 35. So all my relationships, not all of them, I had, when it came to my guy friends, it was a mix. There were definitely narcissists in there, but then there were also good people in there too. But when it came to women, they were all narcissists, because my mom's a narcissist, and I grew up, relating to this female narcissist. All my female relationships, man, it was terrible. And I was so insecure with myself. I always felt like, I have to change something about myself to get this person to like me. And then, the narcissistic women that I would attract, because I would seek these people out. I was because I was so comfortable in that weird emotional relationship you get, where it's they pour the love on and then they pull it back, and then they pour it on and they pull it back, and that's what I was used to as a kid. So that's what I knew. And so I would, from my traumatic emotional experiences of childhood, I would then bond to these people. So I'm bonding to these narcissistic women, and it's a vicious cycle, and it never ends up well. And it's always, from my perspective, I'm always trying to change myself and suit their needs. You kind of never say no to anything. It's just you get walked all over, and then it ultimately ends up in splitting up and getting screwed over, whatever. But the way I broke that cycle was, the first thing was, number one, I got sober. I stopped drinking all the time. I stopped smoking weed. The next thing I did was, from that sober place, I then began to feel all my emotions and everything that I was feeling when I'd be relating to people, and the anxiety that I would feel around people, or the calmness, whatever. And I was able to then observe these feelings, and then I pursued what these feelings were. I started to gain understanding by learning about human behavior and like the definitions behind that and what that means. And then through that studying of human behavior, it led me to narcissism, and began to study narcissism and understand that specific human behavior more. And this was out of me wanting to figure out, like, what is wrong with me. I had all these emotional problems as a child, and then as an adult, I'm not relating to people in a natural way. I can't find normal people to be around, and that was troubling. And when you're sober, you're forced to confront all those feelings. So the only way you're going to get out of that is by learning and understanding. And then once you understand, you see the behavior. Because these narcissists, that's their weakest thing, is it's all patterns. It's a repeat of the pattern. And you can start predicting their behavior and understanding exactly what they're up to. And then once you become familiar with the terminology and the kind of definition of their behavior, then you can see it more clearly. And so, through getting sober, through gaining understanding, building my own self-respect back, by some miracle, my wife came into my life. And I was coming from a place of sobriety and just being as real as possible, and her and I really got along. And what's interesting about her is she came from a narcissistic family environment, and within these narcissistic family structures, there's people play different roles. The narcissist kind of puts people in different roles, and one of the roles is what's called a seer. And the seers are people that see the behavior, and they know something's up. They know, like, something's not right here, something's off. And so, my wife is the one, when she came around, I had cut my family off for a year. I wasn't speaking to them. I didn't know about the narcissism at the time, but they were a real constant bombardment in my life in kind of a negative way, and so I chose to stop talking to them for a year. That's when I was gaining my sobriety. I was just working on rebuilding, and around that time is when I met my wife, and then I told her, hey, we're going to meet my family, and she instantly knew something was off, and then she just kind of subtly started introducing the fact that, hey, something's not right, and let's learn about this, and kind of move through this together. And so that's what we've done. And like I said, by some miracle, this person was brought into my life, and it's been amazing, because finally there's just a normal person I can relate to. We're able to get married, have a couple kids, we have a great family. It's all love. Obviously it's not perfect, but we can always come back from it, from any disagreement or anything that goes on. And together, you know, we've been able to understand this narcissistic behavior, and it's been huge for me. And what it's enabled me to do is I'm breaking those trauma bonds. And now, narcissists come into my life constantly. Like, I'm dealing with one right now, this guy, and it's just really funny to watch him and his weak ass narcissistic attempts to, like, all this guy wants to do is you know, get me riled up, or, you know, he's like, he'll say something behind my back to some people here, and then he'll go over here, and he's like, the amount of energy this person puts out to, like, I don't even know what his end goal is, because I keep telling him we're in the same industry, and I'm like, dude, we could just work together and it'd be fine. But he's so stuck on that narcissistic, manipulative, dominant thing. But what's happening is that, you know, you can only do that on so many people before everyone's like, dude, you know, fuck this guy. And he's basically ejected himself out of our industry. We're a small knit group of forestry professionals. And, you know, I just drop subtle hints to friends of ours, and they're like, yeah, this guy's up to weird stuff. And then they realize that, you know, it comes to light. Once you see their behavior, you can start shedding the light on it. And what'll happen is, most likely, my prediction with this guy is he'll eject himself out of this area, and he'll just go somewhere else where he can do his narcissism abuse on other people. But anyway, you know, that is how I broke the cycle of narcissistic abuse, and that is how you can protect yourself against other narcissists. Because my theory is, I think it's 1 in 3, if not 1 in 2, I don't know, 1 in 4, 1 in 3, 1 in 2 people are on the spectrum of narcissism. I don't know. You tell me what you think, but you have to start understanding, you know, the patterns and behaviors, and the trauma bonding's the big one. So anyway, catch you in the next one. Thank you.